it's Sunday evening, it's 9 o'clock, and this is episode 5 of Lockdown Live Sessions. Now, it's good to be back, firstly. We were away last week, unfortunately, because I wasn't very well, and a whole load of other things. But we are back, and tonight marks the start of our double bill weekend. So, just going to wait for a few people to jump on, because it's not telling me that people have, and I'm just going to set a few things. So, can I? Yes, I can. There we go. Right, okay. So, we've got quite a packed show for you today. We are looking at the topic of domestic violence. What constitutes domestic violence? How friends and family can help with domestic violence, how you can spot that you're in a domestically abusive relationship, and as always on shows where I do topics like this, we have got some statistics. So, before I get into the show, I do want to do a quick plug. As some of you may know, as of today, I am going to be challenging myself to run 100 miles for the amazing Teenage Cancer Trust. Doing it for a couple of reasons. I've lost friends to cancer before. I've got friends that are currently fighting cancer, and it's always been a charity that's quite close to my heart. And those that know me that are watching know that I don't run. So this is probably one of the biggest challenges I will ever complete. If you want any more information, I will pop some in the Lockdown Live Sessions page. I'll pop the link, I'll pop some information about it, and I will do that after tonight's show, as well as periodically throughout the week. So, that is the Teenage Cancer Trust, that's the plug for that. Very fantastic cause, a cause that I'm looking forward to raising money for, and hoping that I can raise as much money as I can. So, now I've got that out of the way, firstly I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in, thank you for sticking with me and supporting me, and we have got 81 followers on this page now, which, considering this page was only set up about 2 weeks ago, that is pretty good. So for those that follow, for those that have followed because they know me, those that have followed because they've liked the page through some of the adverts that I've been doing, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing to the YouTube channel, which I'll go into more detail about later in the show, and let's get this show, started really, off to a really good start. We've had a fantastic success with Series 1 so far, including on the last show we did 2 weeks ago, where I interviewed the one and only Miss Katie Rokar from Channel 4's The Circle. And what a fantastic show that was. We interviewed her about her time on the show, we interviewed her about TikTok, we interviewed her about how she's keeping busy in lockdown. We also had some of my top 5 film and TV of the week. So guys, if you haven't already checked the things out, again, go check them out. Were the shows that were on the top 5 last week before last when we did this show. And we just had a bit of a general discussion really about sort of, we spoke to Casey, as we said, about The Circle, we did my top 5, we had a bit of a discussion about image and how that could be perceived, through watching reality TV shows, social media, etc, etc. And it was a really, really good show, and guys, we've had over 700 views on that video, over the 2 parts of that video, so thank you so much. If you haven't seen it or you want to watch it again, it is available on here from 2 weeks ago, or head over to the YouTube channel where all of my shows go. There's a post every Monday and every Friday, some with shows, some with promos. I might stick a cheeky midweek promo in there for you as well some weeks. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on last week's show if you did. It was fantastic to see you. I can't see who's viewing, so if you are viewing, then drop me a comment and I'll be able to see who's viewing. But hello to those of you that are. I'll just recap what we're going to be talking about tonight, just for those that have missed it. So we are looking at domestic violence now. Before I go any further with this, I do need to put out a content warning that obviously this is a discussion show today. I don't have anyone with me, unfortunately, but this is a discussion. So for those that maybe a little bit more of a sensitive nature, our topic tonight will include some full, frank discussions about domestic violence and about the impact that domestic violence has. So please do be aware of that going forward on this show. So we are going to be talking about what constitutes domestic violence, what domestic violence is, how you can spot being in a domestically abusive relationship, how you can notice being in a domestically abusive relationship, and if you are in one, how you can stay safe and help yourself. We're going to be looking at how friends and family can help you if you are suffering from that, from being in a domestic abusive relationship. And we're going to look at some of the help and support that friends, family and victims can get at the end of the show, and there will be a post going up at the end of tonight's show with a variety of different links and phone numbers for anyone that is affected by the topics of tonight's show. You guys can call them up, drop them have a look on their website to see if you can get some support. So, what I'm going to do, because we are now on 9:05, so I'm actually ahead of schedule, which for me is miraculous, because normally, for those that have tuned in over the past few weeks, I very often run over schedule. So for me to be on schedule is really, really good. So what I'm going to do is I am going to shuffle my pieces of paper around. So I've got some stats for you, etc., etc., etc. Because there's quite a few of them that I'd like to read, which is why they're on paper. But firstly, there may, as I've said, we are talking about domestic violence. It's quite a heavy topic, so there may be some conversation in this video that may not be suitable for some viewers. So, domestic violence does take many forms, and this is a bit about what domestic violence is. Domestic abuse takes many forms, and that constitutes financial abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and mental abuse, to name a few sort of subtopics of abuse. Now, there is a massively common misconception through my experience of sort of domestic violence and knowing people that have been in domestically abusive relationships and knowing people that haven't. And there is quite a common misconception that domestic abuse is only physical. Now, it's not. There is a lot of different, as I've said, there is a lot of different forms of domestic abuse. I've quite sadly been a victim of domestic abuse, and domestic violence, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this show tonight. And a lot of that was physical, but there was a mental element in there as well. Now, in terms of stats, I'm going to give you guys a few stats to kind of just highlight the severity of domestic violence, highlight just how bad it actually is. Now, on average, over 500,000 men and 1.2 million women fall victim to domestic violence abuse every year. 2 women per week are murdered, and 30 men per month, and they are in domestic violence related incidents. Now, specifically in 2018 and 19, 16 men were killed at the hands of their current or former partner, compared to 18 women. And in the same year, just over 24% of both men and women who identified as LGBTQ+ were victims of partner abuse, compared to an average of just 8.4 of victims that identify as heterosexual. Now, I've got a few more. In the year before that, in the year 17 and 18, 1.2% of men and 1.7% of women were victims of force at the hands of their partner, which is actually slightly lower than what it was in 18 and 19. And the biggest thing, I think, for people that are sufferers of domestic abuse is reporting, and how actually it's quite difficult to report something as serious as domestic abuse because of the implications that people that are suffering may feel that comes with. And on that, only 17.3% of men and women as a collective have reported domestic abuse to the police, compared to 47% of people who would report their experiences to a friend or a neighbour, and 61% of women and 13% of men are rough sleepers as a result of domestic abuse. So, there's a few little facts and figures for you on domestic abuse, and I think now we've gone over some facts and figures, I just want to touch on the trauma that people suffering from domestic abuse and violence can go through. DV victims, domestic violence, DV, can face years of turmoil and trauma, as can friends and families. Consistent moving house, a very sort of... There are a lot of trust issues involved when people are domestically abusive towards someone. It actually really does impact the trust levels, both between victims and strangers and victims and their family and friends. And that could cause friction in relationships between family and friends because it could cause frustration, anger, confusion, because of the fact that very often family and friends can see that something's wrong, but when someone isn't ready to report that, it's really, really difficult to be able to actually say, look, this isn't going right, there's something not right here. And through experience, a lot of the time when someone says to you, something's not right, you need to do something, you need to get out of this, a lot of the time, through fear and through what a victim may constitute as love, a victim almost shuts it down. There's nothing wrong, it's absolutely fine, this is a one-off, he or she won't do it again. All of these sort of, what some may term as excuses, come out to play because of the fact that really the bottom line is people are scared. People are scared that actually, if the police do get involved, it's going to make things worse. It's going to, make that exercise of power and control a lot worse, in order for the perpetrators and abusers to maybe not get into as much trouble or try and evade the police. Other things that could impact on a domestic victim, in terms of trauma, are if there are children involved, the children will be very well potentially could be either taken away or put on a child protection register, which will then involve social services, which can be quite a long and complicated process in terms of having visits, ensuring that children are safe, because we need to ensure that everyone's safe, particularly if they're living with someone that's domestically abusive. There can be a lot of anxiety issues and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which could take the form of flashbacks, thoughts, certain rooms or certain places could trigger flashbacks and horrible memories and thoughts, certain movements or certain mannerisms from people, like for example if someone is led to believe that if a door is shut, if they have an argument with a partner and they walk out and slam the door, some people are led to believe that that's actually the last time they're going to see them, and then that can cause a lot of anxiety, a lot of issues surrounding sort of trust, fear, upset, grief, even though deep down a lot of the time the victim knows something's wrong but may not have the strength of the voice or the confidence to be able to speak out. And another thing really as well, and the last thing I will touch on when it comes to sort of trauma, is mental health. Now, we touched on mental health earlier in the series, as those that have watched every week will know, but domestic violence can also bring on a whole lot of mental health issues, some quite serious. From my own experience, a lot of emotions are rushing into a victim's body after their ordeal, asking why it happened to them. Is this a normal relationship? This can't be right, but I think it is right because he won't do it again or she won't do it again. how long has it been toxic for? Has it really been like this? And a lot of other different questions. So a lot of the time, it really does mess with the mental health of a victim. Hindsight can be very dangerous. It's a very powerful thing. The what ifs, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, and it could be a massive detriment to someone's mental health because they are convincing themselves that. So I've just seen a few comments. They are convincing themselves that that actually, there may be something wrong, but they're not quite sure what's wrong. But if they did something differently, then it may be right. Now, I just want to quickly point out, good evening to Rose. Rose has made the comment also that others don't always believe what is going on as perpetrators have two sides to them. The nice side, which is loving and caring in public, and the private side, which occurs inside the relationship. Rose, that is exactly right. Excuse me. A lot of the time, perpetrators can be very two-faced, can be very, as Rose has said, really nice and everything you want them to be outside in public, when you're going to town, if you're going to friends, but really, really controlling and manipulative when you're behind closed doors, which can also reach the point of disallowing a victim to go and see friends and family, controlling what a victim wears, how they have their hair, what they eat, when they eat. There's a lot of different things that can go a little bit wrong is a bit of a weak phrase. There's a lot of things that can really detriment a victim that is behind closed doors. So yes, Rose, that is a really good point, because actually sometimes the perpetrators are often believed when they say, nothing's gone on, it was only a bruise, they hit it on the door, or they hit it on the fridge, or they've hit their head on the window. There's a lot of different things that perpetrators can come up with in order to sort of talk their way out of getting into trouble. So there's that fear that a victim may not be believed if they went on to report this, whether that was to the police or whether that was to friends and family. Now, I just want to now move on because I will get some statistics. Before I do move on, though, Rose has also made another comment. Lots of coercive control is always used. Yes, coercive control is a very big thing. It's all about a perpetrator trying to get the victim's play into their hands and manipulating and coercing them to do something that they may not want to do, but do it to please their partner, to make them happy, because it often comes with fears of violence and abuse. So it is actually now a criminal offence to exercise coercive control on anyone. Now, I'm going to throw some more statistics at you guys shortly, but firstly, I want to move on to how someone as a victim can spot violence and can spot actually when a relationship is getting toxic before it actually gets too late. So I've got a list of questions here that victims should need to ask themselves in order to sort of try and establish whether that relationship is how toxic that relationship is. So, does the perpetrator make threats and do things just to scare the victim? Do they put them down just to make them feel bad when they're alone or around friends? Do they make a victim do things they don't want to without listening to them, which is another kind of way of coercive control? A perpetrator may make a victim feel guilty if they don't spend time with them. They may not make an effort to get on with friends or family. They hit, slap or push a victim, or kick, or bite, or spit, all of that horrible stuff. They may look through a victim's phone, social media or web history just to try and track what they're doing and what they've been on. they constantly want to text you or call you to find out where you are, find out when you're coming home, to try and exercise that control over their victim. You know, it's constant text, constant phone calls, where are you, voicemails, etc., etc. If a victim may cheat on a perpetrator, may cheat on a victim or accuse the victim of cheating on them, a perpetrator may steal things or make the victim buy them things, and finally, a perpetrator may force a victim to have sex with them when they don't want to. So it may well be consensual in the sense that that victim has agreed to have sex with their perpetrator, but it may not be something they want to do, which is quite bad, and there are sort of borderlines as to whether that falls into rape. Even though it's consensual, can it fall into rape if there is evidence or proof that a victim has been pushed into doing that? Also, whether the partner suddenly got jealous or more possessive, if they're charming one minute and abusive the next, as Rose mentioned, whether they suddenly become more controlling and demand to know or dictate where a victim is going, which is what I was saying about calls and texts, who they are seeing and what they are wearing. So, if you have any opinions or comments so far, or any advice for anyone, please do pop it in the comments. I'll read out as many as I can tonight. Also, if you prefer, ping a message to the Lockdown Live Sessions Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Lockdown Live Sessions, which is exactly where this is being broadcast from. Ping me a message on there, and I will do my best to support anyone that needs that support. And also do check out the links on the page later on this evening. But if you've got any opinions or comments so far, please do let me know, and I will do my best to answer them or point you in the right direction. So, we have spoken now, sorry, all of my pieces of paper with statistics and stuff on are getting really muddled up. So if you just bear with me to sort that out. So, we've spoken a bit more about how someone as a victim can identify being in a domestically abusive relationship. So the last thing we're going to speak about before we go to a quick break is how a victim can notice, how friends and family of the victims can notice this, because noticing as a victim is really important, but to have that support and to, you know, have that sort of reassurance that everything is okay is something that friends and family can do. And if the friends and family don't notice that, if a victim decides they're going to come and report it to them, it can make things quite difficult. It can make things quite, you know, not awkward, but quite challenging to talk through if a friend or family member is oblivious to what's going on. So, often victims are hesitant to tell people, as we've said, including their friends and family, because they often feel that the friends and family believe that the abuser should be reported to the police, but in doing so that their abuser will continue to abuse them, and so that is sometimes the case. Friends and family, it's very similar to how a victim can notice domestic violence, in the sense that you may notice that the victim doesn't speak to you as often, or the pattern of when they speak to you, or where you go, whether you meet, how often you meet, those patterns could change. And that could always be quite a big indicator, especially if you haven't had anything such as a fallout or anything to warrant that from happening. A victim may become more quiet and subdued around people. You may feel that a victim is a lot more anxious, a lot more tense and on edge when they're around either others or around their perpetrator whilst they are with you, among a lot of other things as well. And they're just a few baseline pointers really as to how friends and family can notice that a victim is going through a domestically abusive relationship, other than the obvious, such as cuts, bruises, scrapes, if they are seen whilst, you know, if the victim hasn't been prevented from coming to see their family and friends. So, in a second, we will go on to talking about what you can do in order to help a victim feel at ease if you're a friend or a family member or an external body. Bear with me, or external body. You know, we'll go on to a bit about how you can help if domestic violence gets reported. Rose, you've come up with another really good point. I'm really liking your points this evening, Rose, so please do keep them coming because they are really interesting. The fact is that most victims will attempt to leave their relationship 7 times before actually escaping, because it's almost like a boomerang effect, because it takes a while for them to potentially believe or see that actually what they're going through is wrong and it is domestically abusive and it is toxic. So domestic violence is a crime that is considered to be underreported as well. On average, a victim is subject to 35 assaults before calling the police. And as friends and family, the first thing to do is to ensure that the victim knows you're there. So, you know, if you feel, as I've said, that a victim is more subdued, a victim is, you know, some of their patterns of behaviour are changing, the most important thing to do is to let them know that you're there for them. That is the most important thing to do. You know, it's obviously a horrific ordeal for victims to go through. It's really, really not nice. So they would need, when they do eventually muster the courage up to go and speak to friends or family members, they will need kind of your utmost support, understanding, and they will also need your compassion and empathy, really. Bear with me, something has just popped up on my computer. There we go, that's gone. They will need your compassion and your empathy, really. So after the break, because we are going to go to a quick short 2-minute break now, so after the break, what we're going to talk about is we are going to talk about how you can support your victim. If you've got a victim of domestic violence or domestic abuse that you know, how you can support them in terms of if they come to you to report things, if, you know, in the run up to that, how you can ensure that someone knows that you are there if they want to talk to you. We're going to look at my top 5 film and TV of the week as usual, as we would do every show. I am just sorting out my show plan. Yep, we will look at my top 5 film and TV of the week, and we'll obviously go on to support networks and how, you know, different forms of support and different sort of websites, phone numbers where domestic abuse victims and their families and friends can get help. We've got all that coming up, plus I'll speak to you a little bit more about tomorrow's show, and that's all happening right after this 2-minute short break. See you soon.